بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am back again to continue this series, and I apologize for the long weeks of absence from this platform, but it was really beyond my control. Anyway, here I am back again. Before starting, let's remind ourselves to continue the boycott against France. Now we are ready for our lesson. O Allah, teach us what benefits us and grant us the benefit from what you have taught us. Allahumma ameen. Let's start ala barakatillah. In the previous lesson, we started discussing the conditions of the contracting parties. So far, we studied those that pertain to the Hanafi's jurisprudence and Malikis jurisprudence. We said that the Hanafis specify two main conditions for the contracting parties. The first is the eligibility of the seller and buyer, which is achieved through discernment by completing the age of 7. While considered concluded, the contract can only be executed by the permission of the guardian or the permission of the contracting party after attaining puberty. The second main condition is multiplicity of the contracting parties, in which case no agent can represent both the seller and the buyer at the same time unless he is the guardian, father, judge, or messenger of both. If you would like to understand more about the Hanafis fiqh in this topic, just click on the suggestions above. For the Malikis, we said that the seller has to satisfy 4 conditions, 3 of which are shared with the buyer. The 3 shared conditions are: first, both the buyer and seller must be discerning, and for the Malikis that would be reaching the age of 7 years. Second, both the buyer and seller must be either owners or legal agents of the owners or guardians of the owners. Third, both the buyer and the seller must be free to choose to contract. The condition that the Malikis stipulate to be exclusive for the seller is that he or she must be mature. Now we move to the Shafi'i school of thought, where they stipulate 4 conditions for the contracting parties. First, the contracting person must be mature. But what does maturity mean? From the Shafi'i's point of view, maturity is a combination of 3 things. First, a person who is mature must have attained puberty. Second, he must be sane. And third, he must be protective of his own religion and financial well-being. So with this condition, I mean the condition of maturity, who will be excluded from a conclusive sale contract? The excluded thus will be a child, an insane person, or a person under supervision due to his incompetence. Notice that unlike the Hanafis and Malikis, puberty for the Shafi'īs is a condition of conclusion. Therefore, the sale of a child who has not attained puberty, even if he is discerning, without the permission of his guardian, is a void sale. Now, we come to the second condition. No coercion without right. Shafi'īs stipulate that if a person undergoes a sale contract forcefully, without right to be coerced, then this action or his actions have no legal effect because the contract would be considered invalid. Now, bear in mind that the approval of law supersedes and overrides the approval of the party to the contract. So that would be considered rightful coercion. Let's take an example. Arif is indebted to Zidane, but he refuses to pay back his debt. In this case, a judge rightfully orders selling some of Arif's property to pay his debts to Zidane, without the permission, of course, of Arif. Alternatively, the judge can imprison Arif to force him to sell some of his property to pay his debts. This is called rightful coercion. The third condition stipulates that the person purchasing the copy of the Quran, the Mus'haf, or Islamic texts like books on jurisprudence or a hadith books or Islamic tradition, or purchasing a Muslim slave, for example. So the person purchasing any of these things should be a Muslim. The fall of these items in the hands of an infidel is demeaning for Islam. On the contrary to the Malikis, for Shafi'īs, the purchase of these items by an infidel is invalid. Moreover, the purchase of a Muslim slave by an infidel is humiliating, and because Allah states in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa verse 141, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلَنْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. صدق الله العظيم. Fourth, the buyer shouldn't belong to an army purchasing weapons to be used against the Muslims. In this case, it is impermissible to sell the buyer any weapon. However, items like steel used in production of items other than weapons are permissible. Now, notice one thing. The last two conditions pertain to the buyer. Yet, we can say that since the reason for condition number 3 is to avoid demeaning Islam, then condition 3 applies to the seller as well. That is, the seller of the Mus'haf should be a Muslim. Condition 4 is solely applied to the buyer. We have come to the end of the 11th lesson. Don't be a miser by holding back from participating, for your contribution will be very important for this channel to spread out. As usual, I will be very happy to hear from your questions or hear your comments. الدال على الخير كفاعله. If you haven't subscribed yet, then do so and activate the alarm so that you get notified when a new video gets uploaded. Take care. في أمان الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.